Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to this Your Overseas Home webinar, the Cyprus Golden Visa, Your Route to Residency Made Easy. Whether you're watching live or catching up on demand, it's wonderful to have you here. My name is Christopher Nye from Your Overseas Home, and I spent the last 20 years helping buyers navigate the overseas property markets, and of course, especially since Brexit, to help people get those all-important visas to retire or to move over to Cyprus to work. I'm delighted to be your host today. I'm joined by Cyprand Mostert from Holborn Pass. So I'm going to ask Cyprand to just introduce yourself and say a little bit about Holborn Pass, and then come back to me for some housekeeping and things.
Thank you very much, Christopher. I appreciate the opportunity, and hello to everybody who's tuned in today. My name is Cyprand Mostert, good tongue twister, Afrikaans tongue twister. I'm based in Cyprus for the last 6 years, and I work in partnership with Holborn. Holborn is one of the biggest international financial advisors firms. We have over 2 billion assets under management. We operate in 9 jurisdictions, including jurisdictions in Europe, Cyprus, Spain, Portugal, the UK, and the UAE, of course, where we originally come from. I started my career in South Africa as a financial advisor, specializing in offshore investments. And over the last 6 or 7 years, I've also really been concentrating on expat business, people moving from South Africa, from the UK, from the US to Cyprus, and Spain, Portugal, and all the other jurisdictions as well. And since I've been living in Cyprus for the last 6 years now, I have become the Cyprus guy with Holborn. And I hope that today I can help answer some questions to people, and those of you out there thinking of moving to Cyprus, hopefully I can give you some background and more clarity on whether Cyprus is a jurisdiction for you.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. So Holborn, just to get this right, Holborn Assets are wealth managers. But since it became obvious that you can invest your way into countries, so your expertise grew, and you moved into and you started Holborn Pass to align that investment and visa strategy.
Yes, about 15 years ago, so Holborn, we realized that there is a new market, and there's for mobile people. When the internet started making it easier for you to work from home, people started to move all over the world, and there was a need for financial advice in the first place, and then secondly, to help people to ease them with the transition from one jurisdiction to the next. It's quite a traumatic thing. It sounds romantic when you think I'm going to change and I'm going to live somewhere exotic. But it helps a lot if you've got someone to hold your hand. And Holborn saw that opportunity, and we started a division, and the division specializes in people who are looking for either second residencies or second passports. We offer passports in Europe, in the Caribbean, and we tailor them. Each client's needs might be different. You know, some people just need a second passport because for the ease of travel. Other people are moving to a different jurisdiction, starting a new job, and other people are just looking for investments or retiring to a spot where they have where there's more favorable tax advantages for them. And so we have been doing it for quite some time, and we've got a specialized division that only looks after people who are looking for second passports or second residency.
Okay, fantastic. So exactly, we're focusing on one of the most attractive and accessible routes into Europe, not just into Cyprus, but into Europe, the Cyprus Golden Visa. It's fast, it's flexible, it's ideal for those seeking security, lifestyle, and long-term value as well as an investment. So a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to cover a bit about the Cyprus Golden Visa, what it is, why it matters, who qualifies, what the financial requirements are, what makes Cyprus different from some other golden visa countries. So I've got a whole bunch of questions that I'm going to ask, but we don't just want to hear from me. We want to hear from you too. So please put your questions into the questions tab on the right-hand side. I can see that people already are. That's excellent. And for those who are just trying to work out how the tech works, why don't you just tell us what country you're in now, just to see where you are now, and where you might be coming from to Cyprus. So just stick that into question tab. I won't read out your name, don't worry, but that would be great. So I am going to. So my first question, I suppose, is well, it's a weird one because obviously people usually want to move to Cyprus because they want to move to Cyprus, but can I obtain a Cyprus Golden Visa even if I don't intend to live in Cyprus full time?
I think, Christopher, just before we carry on, I just want to clarify Cyprus. The Cyprus Golden Visa Scheme or the Golden Passport Scheme, as we used to know, does not exist anymore. It used to be that you could invest 2 million euros in a new build in Cyprus, and you would then qualify for a passport. That scheme for the last 3 years doesn't exist anymore. So currently, it's the Cyprus Golden Visa Scheme, and the Golden Visa Scheme really is a situation where you would buy a new property, and you would then get permanent residency in Cyprus. And yes, to answer your question, you absolutely can get a permanent residency through the Golden Residency Scheme without having to live in Cyprus permanently. And there are many, many people who do and take advantage of that.
Okay, so in terms of so Cyprus still has the residency,
Absolutely.
Sorry, the house purchase for investment option, and what sort of numbers? What's our minimum investment amount?
All right, so basically, there's a few different options that you can have. You can have the residency scheme by purchasing a property, and there you have to invest a minimum of 300,000 euros. But you really have to keep in mind that 300,000 euros excluding VAT, and VAT on property in Cyprus is 19%. And obviously, there's costs involved with buying a property, of the transfer duties, etc., etc. So you're looking practically at about 350,000 euros as a minimum investment. There are some other options. You can make an investment into Cyprus unit trust or investments as well. You can invest in Cyprus property companies where you can have qualify for the same investment. This visa gives you a permanent residency, a right to stay in Cyprus, but it does not give you the right to work. So you can move to Cyprus, you can live here, but you cannot be employed if you're a third country national. Obviously, if you're from the European Union, it's different. The requirement is that you have to come to Cyprus at least once every 2 years. And the reason for that really is that you have to come and renew your residency card. And you have to be physically in the country to do that. But for the rest of the time, you don't have to live in the country. Of course, if you want to become tax resident in Cyprus, and that's what many people, why they choose Cyprus, then there are the tax residency requirements, and those are either 60 days, a year, and then you cannot be tax resident anywhere else in the world, or alternatively, you have to spend 6 months and 1 day in Cyprus, which will make you tax resident in Cyprus.
Okay, and I know it's off topic, but you are a tax specialist in Cyprus, so if we come to you for help with the Golden Visa, you can also help with that.
Absolutely. So we try and offer a full service. So we help the clients find a property, go through what used to be a bit of a minefield, but I'm happy to say it's become a lot more regulated and much more above board. But we help a client source a property. We help them if they need to move funds from whichever jurisdiction they have to move it to. We help them with the legal advice to make sure that the property has got all the required permits and that there are title deeds. We then go and help the client apply for their residency permit. We open their bank accounts. So it's a full service. We try and hold your hand as much as possible. This is supposed to be fun for most people, and we try and make sure that you that we take all the pitfalls out of it, so that you've got one spot that you work through, and that you've got someone that you can trust in Cyprus.
Sure. Okay. Fantastic. So, in terms of how long it's going to take, what's a typical timeline for getting from start to finish to get residency in our home in Cyprus?
If you have cash, then the cash is here, and you buy the property, and the property is already built, you can do it within 3.5 months. But realistically, you're looking at 6 months. I've had 2 cases that's taken 3.5 months, but that's when all the planets have aligned perfectly, and that doesn't usually happen. So I think 6 months is a minimum that you should look at. But it doesn't mean that you can't come to Cyprus. So you could, once you've purchased the property and you've made the deposit, you can actually travel to Cyprus on a tourist visa, and you can stay. You've got 90 days to stay, and as long as your application is in, the Cyprus authorities will be quite happy for you to stay. When the application is in and they've given you an indication that they are going to issue it for you, then you can stay, and so you don't actually have to wait until you've got permanent residency to move you. And often that is an advantage for people who are looking for tax residency, so they can get their tax residency earlier.
Okay. Now, did you say, you may have already said while I was looking over the questions, but did you say that only certain kinds of property qualify, for example, new builds, or can it be anything?
Yes, correct. It used to always be that there were some resales that were allowed as well, but that was recently changed, and now it's only new builds. And an interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the VAT on new builds have changed as well. So historically, new builds were generally charged, especially if you're going to use it as a personal, your personal residence, you would only pay 5% VAT, and any other property would be 19%. That's changed recently as well, and now there is a cap. The cap has been brought down a lot lower, and about 350,000 is the maximum where you can have the 5% VAT, and then it becomes 19%. But it's not a retrospective law, which is very good. So there's still quite a bit of stock of developments that were started before the law was changed, and therefore these properties are still at 5%. So if you are interested in, and you're considering coming to Cyprus and buying a property, making use of the property residency scheme, I would suggest that you don't wait too long, because the stock will go, and there's a substantial difference between 19% and 5%. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Okay. Yeah, we've had Gary has said that he bought a 350,000 or 375,000 house, but it wasn't a new build, so he's stuck not being able to get permanent residency. I guess there's people caught like that. Okay.
I think at the moment, and I'm very sorry to hear that, but I think at the moment you might find 1 or 2 stories like that, because there's the transition. The law changed fairly recently,
right?
So there might be 1 or 2 people that were caught like that. Yes,
yeah.
And it's something to be aware of.
Okay. Philip has said, if I buy a residential building plot for, say, 100,000 euros and then build a house on it, could this still qualify?
Yes, it depends. We would have to go and register with the government, and if the government recognizes as a new build which will qualify, then yes. So I would caution you that if that is what you want to do, and you want to do it yourself, that come and contact us. Let us have a look, see, and because it depends on where the property is. There's a whole lot of regulations that you have to comply with, and we would check beforehand and let you know. Don't just buy something because you might burn your fingers.
When I was having some building work done, and I needed to get planning permission, this was in the UK, I hadn't realized that. I thought the rules are the rules, and that's that. But when I spoke to a planning expert, he said, no, I can talk to the planning people, I can discuss this, I can discuss that, we can work it out. Is it a bit like that with a golden visa? Can you negotiate and discuss with them? Well, I'm going to, or is there firm rules and no discussion?
It's fairly firm. So developers have to apply for their developments to form part of these schemes. Now, generally, they all do it. So when you naturally go, they will all comply with it. However, there are quite strict rules on planning. So once the developer has given in the plans and those have been okayed, if you make changes to those plans and material changes, especially on the inside of those buildings, you can find that you will not get that the title deeds will not be issued for that. And there's a lot of those legacy projects in Cyprus where title deeds have not been issued because the developer got permission for X plan, and then the new owner insisted on making changes, and then when the inspector comes to do the inspection, they say, well, this is not what we gave planning permission for, and terribly sorry. So yes, it is quite specific, and I would urge every single person that if you are going to buy a property, even if it's a new build, you have to get hold of someone like myself or an attorney to make sure that the planning permission is for what you are buying, because if it's not, you will not get a title deed. And just on title deeds, Cyprus is an interesting country. Title deeds take a long time. It's completely normal to have a new build and everything being perfect and it taking 3 years to get a title deed. It's not something a lot of people get very worked up about. I was one of them myself, but you've got to understand that everything doesn't work the same in every jurisdiction. And in Cyprus, title deeds take a minimum of about 3 years. Once in a while, you'll get a miracle happen, but generally 3 years is what you're looking at, and that's completely normal.
Okay, sure. So Gary's asking, why does the golden visa only apply to new builds? Is there a reason?
Well, it's a very, I think, a simple reason, because the government wants to boost the development business in Cyprus, and that's the reason. So they want new places being built, and the way to do it is to force everybody to buy a new build. It's a government decision. That's the only reason I can think of.
Yeah, it's the same in New Zealand and Australia and Canada. If you want to buy a property as a non-resident, then you have to get new build. Okay, and indeed with the new Spanish tax that may come in, they're not going to have it on new builds because they want to encourage that. So I guess that's the reason, Gary. Okay, Mark is asking. Well, let's move on to the next thing. So that's the property. So what else for that golden visa, as well as the property? What else do we have to show? Mark said, do you require an annual income from overseas?
Yes, we do. You need an annual income of about 50,000 euros, and then for each, as you add a spouse and a child, for a spouse will be 15,000 and 10,000 euros for each child. It says you've got to maintain the deposits in the bank for 3 years. You have to take out health insurance. So you can register for YESI, but you have to have private health insurance. And that really has got to do with repatriation of your remains if you pass away. Cyprus doesn't have a cremation facility. And so you have to have insurance that will repatriate your remains once you've passed away. You have to have a clean criminal record. And the way they do that is you have to provide a certificate from your home country saying that you have a clean criminal record. And then obviously you have to come to Cyprus because you have to do your biometrics. And then you cannot be employed in Cyprus. Those are the basic requirements. So it's not and then they have once you get here, you have to do a TB test, and they'll take x-rays of your lungs, and there are 1 or 2 other diseases that you have to do a test for as well. So those are pretty straightforward. There aren't really any other requirements other than that. So it's deposit, it's the income, it's and the medical tests, and then insurance, health insurance.
That's quite a high income barrier, I would imagine, for some people. Are you allowed to work from overseas companies?
Oh yes. So lots of people do, and it's generally what's going to happen is, in practice, you find that they don't look at the income barrier at that stage. If you can afford to buy the property, because generally you're buying the property cash, they'll ask for 3 years worth of bank statements. And as long as you've got a decent, and that can be employment in there, that shouldn't be an issue at all.
Okay. Now, what about who else can come with me? Can my
Well,
wife be with
your
you?
wife can come with you. Your children, who are your minor children, can come with you. You can do applications for your parents and her parents, but for each of those, you have to have an additional 15,000 worth of income that you've got to be able to show. So it depends on what your income is, of course. Generally, what happens is, in most cases, you'll find it's a husband and wife. And on the same property, they would come in. If you've got minor children, it's easy. You can, if your children are at university and they're still reliant on you, and you can show that your parents are reliant on you.
So for each child, it's 15,000.
10,000 a child.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
15,000 per spouse or parent.
Okay. Fine. And the age limit for dependent children, would that be 18?
It's 24 if they're still at university, and you can prove it, and you can prove that they're dependent. Otherwise, it's 18.
Okay, sure. Okay, so now let's just think about. So that's the property option. But suppose I've already got a property, or I don't want to buy one. Is there another? What are my other options for an investment?
Yes, so you can also invest in a unit trust, property unit trust scheme in Cyprus, and you can also invest in a property company in Cyprus. But those they're not very popular. We have very, very few people who actually make use of those. And then there's obviously the category F visa, which a lot of people are very keen on, which is known as the retirement visa.
Yes.
And a lot of people are very keen on making use of that. And it's a very nice option, because you only need an annual income of about €9,500 euros a year, and then 4,500 or 4,600 odd for each for your spouse. The problem with that is there is one lady in Nicosia who does the applications, and I know for a fact that they're busy with 2023 applications at the moment.
How many?
So
how many?
2023's applications. So for practical purposes, it's just not working at the moment. The category is available. It looks very attractive, but it's for practical purposes, it's not available. And lots of people have asked me, so why is there only one lady doing the applications, etc., etc.? And I think the reason behind it, obviously, is it's speculation. But from a Cyprus government point of view, a person coming to Cyprus and spending at least 350,000 euros into the economy upfront is much more attractive than someone who is possibly only going to be spending 9,500 euros a year. So it's available, but it's not practical. You can try it, but you're going to wait 4 or 5 years before you come to Cyprus.
Okay, great. So moving on with our questions. So Andy has asked, if I apply with my unmarried partner, would our joint income count? And I'm guessing any grown-up children also couldn't work there either.
Correct. So the grown-up children, number one, would not qualify for the passport if they're over 18 or 24 and they're not studying anymore. So they would have to do an application on their own or buy property on their own. Joint incomes, yes, I think you'll be able to get away with a joint income, provided that it's above the limit, the joint income. So you're looking about 65,000 euros a year.
Okay. It's a shame that there's no, well, I assume there are no other schemes for younger people to work there like they have in Australia or.
So there is a new visa that's come out for digital nomads. Okay. And you are going to ask me the requirements for that, and I don't actually know what they are. I apologize for that. but I can speculate, and I'm probably going to be fairly close to it. It's I think you need to earn about €3,500 a month.
Okay.
And you have to obviously be able to prove that, and as long as you can show that, and you've got a rental agreement, etc., then you can stay. Of course, you can on the category F, which they are only doing up the 2023 applications now. You could rent a property as well. You'd have to rent a property, but there is a digital nomad visa. But I'm going to lie to you if I give you the information on it.
Well, let's not do that. Okay, so Mark is just asking for confirmation with a golden visa. You buy the property, but you also have to have the 50,000 income.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
That's why they.
Yeah, you have.
Why it's a golden visa.
Yeah. So if you, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a salary, of course. It can be pension income. It can be dividend income. It can be rental income. It doesn't have to be. They just want to see, and that's basically what the government is. That's why they're not so particularly strict on that. Is they need to see that you can sustain yourself and won't be a burden on the state.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what happens about healthcare with our golden visa?
So once you have once it's been issued to you and you've moved to Cyprus, you can register for YESI. And YESI is a really good health system. It's similar to the NHS, except that you can get to see your doctor every single time. You get linked to a specific doctor. You can phone today and see the doctor tomorrow. Cyprus has got quite a sophisticated medical infrastructure. We've got lots of hospitals. We're building new hospitals. There's American hospitals. There's German hospitals. There's Greek hospitals. And it's a really, really cheap system as well once you get into it. But you have to remember that you have to have insurance. You have to have medical insurance, even though you're registered with YESI, because you have to be able to have your remains removed, and they will not, if you compromise on that. You have to show that you're paying the insurance, private medical insurance. But you don't. In reality, you don't need it because the national health system, YESI, is really very good system.
Okay, I'm still slightly intrigued with the other investment options, simply because if you found a house that you absolutely adore, you might want to, and it wouldn't qualify, then you might want to invest in something else. So firstly, can you invest in another property, assuming you can afford it, in a new build and rent it out? Would that be acceptable?
You can, but you have to then see you're probably going to pay 19% tax on it, not the 5% VAT on it. And because the 5% VAT is only for properties which are your primary residence in Cyprus. So if you rent it out, you will have to pay the difference in the VAT upfront. So a lot of people won't necessarily want to do that because if you're spending £500,000 or €500,000, 19% is quite a bit of money.
Yeah, and I guess that you wouldn't want to. I think you can only do long-term rentals as a.
Correct. Lots of people do short-term rent and they get away with it, but obviously it's not technically allowed. And if you do, you could be. You have to register, and there's a whole. You have to register for VAT yourself as well because you get the income coming from it. So it's not a practical option.
And those other investment options that you mentioned, I appreciate they're not as popular, but are they still decent investments? I mean, you're not throwing money away, presumably.
Well, no, you're not. I mean, a unit trust is as good as the underlying investment in it, and if you invest in a Cyprus property company, they're as good as the underlying investment in it. So it's a question of identifying those investments and then looking at whether those investments' underlying risk profile, meets that of the person investing in them. So it's not throwing away money, absolutely not. But
Okay.
I mean, if you haven't done your due diligence, then you could be investing in a property where you could lose your money. Or any of those, none of those are guaranteed. It's the same as buying a property. I mean, you could buy a property and you haven't done your due diligence. You could also get into trouble there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. How would you? I don't know if you know anything about any other golden visas, but how do you reckon the Cyprus one compares with others? Is it
So
easy?
the Cyprus one is, I believe, one of the most cost-effective residency programs. It's also one of the fastest residency programs.
Right.
It's also a residency program that can lead to a passport. And if you are serious about getting a passport, it is one of the fastest ways of getting a passport. So you can, if you buy a property by investment, if you live in Cyprus for 5 years, you can apply for your passport, and you'd probably get it within 2 years on your 7th year. There's some requirements of how much time you have to spend, and one specific thing is that in the last year you have to spend the entire year in Cyprus. It's not quite as rigid as that. You're allowed 90 days of travel outside of Cyprus. So you're not jailed in Cyprus for the last year. But if you compare that to other schemes that are popular at the moment, the Portuguese scheme, it's a much cheaper way to go via Cyprus. It's also faster, if you can believe that. And then of course the tax advantages that you get out of Cyprus are really very attractive. So what we are finding, especially with the changes in places like Spain and in Portugal, and even in Greece, Cyprus is very attractive. And then if you're from a UK expat or if you're from a British colony, Cyprus drives on the correct side of the road.
Yeah.
Everybody speaks English. The education system is very good, and the lifestyle is fantastic.
We've had a couple of questions about the Greek language test. I guess this is for a passport rather than just residency. But if you want to, firstly, what's the process of moving from just a visa onto a Greek passport? Is that complicated or long-winded?
Yeah. So firstly, it's a Cyprus passport, not a Greek passport. We're two different countries. Yeah, so it's not a particularly difficult process to go through. You have to meet the time requirements of being a resident, and then you have to do 2 little tests. You have to do a Greek language test, and it's a Mickey Mouse test to a large extent. It's equivalent of what about an 8 or a 10-year-old child would be able to do in school. There's lots of people and institutions that offer the Greek lessons, and I would encourage people, if you're moving to Cyprus, you don't ever have to learn Greek, but I would, because the Greek language has certain expressions, and a lot of those expressions get translated directly into English.
Okay.
And if you're looking at them from an English point of view, you can sometimes you might think someone's being rude to you, but they're not. They're just saying it in the way that they would say it in Greek. So I would encourage people to try and speak a bit of Greek. And the tests are not that difficult. So the one test is a language test, and the second test that you have to do is a little cultural and history test. And that's got to do with the history of Cyprus and the partition in 1974. So they basically want you to know, who the current prime minister is, and who's the minister of foreign affairs, how many political parties do we have in parliament, and what happened in 1974. I actually have not written the test yet, but I've spoken to people who have. I'm happy to write mine pretty soon. And as soon as I do, I'll be very happy to come and give some feedback.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Right, we are starting to run out of time. So if you have questions, do please put them in. I'm going to start hoovering through some of the other ones we've had that I perhaps didn't understand the first time I read them. So bear with me. So Andy's asking for some clarification on the 5% VAT thing. how does it work when buying a property at around 600,000 euros?
Okay, so currently, you're paying 5% VAT on the first 200 square meters of a property. Everything above that, you're paying 19%. If so, it's irrelevant of what the cost is of the property. So if your property cost is 500,000 euros, but it's below 200 square meters, you're going to pay 5% VAT. If your property costs €1 million and it's less than 200, you'll still pay 5%. But everything that's over that 200 square meters, you're going to pay 19% VAT. That is if it is in a development which was registered before the change in VAT. If it was registered after the change in VAT, then if it was 500,000 euros, you'd pay 19%. Everything over 350 is 19,000.
Yeah, I'm remembering from when we did our guides to buying property in Cyprus and how fiendishly complicated it all was.
It's worth getting someone to help you and explain it to you properly, so that you are exactly clear what you get into. You don't want to have a surprise when you come halfway down and you've got to pay 20% more than what you thought you should have paid. And generally, what will happen is everybody's going to quote you a price excluding the VAT. So every brochure you're going to see, every advertisement you're going to see is going to be excluding VAT. So as a rule, I add 20% on any price because then you have got a good idea of what it's going to be. But like at the moment, if you still buy in properties which are registered before the change in VAT, then it's not an issue and you will qualify for the 5%.
Okay, next question. John has asked, is the Cyprus Golden Visa likely to be affected in any way if Cyprus joins the Schengen area?
Right. Very pertinent and good question. So something that people don't take into account, especially, and now it's something which is relevant to UK residents as well, is Cyprus is not part of Schengen. So you can't just, like in the old days, jump on a plane and go to France or go to Italy or wherever. You have to apply for a visa. And in Cyprus, it's virtually impossible to get an appointment for a Schengen visa. As a third country nationals, there are bots that book up every single spot into them, and eventually, if you really get desperate, you're going to pay someone 300 or 400 euros to get you an appointment with a residency. So the Schengen, joining Schengen is a very big deal for Cyprus. Next year, Cyprus has got the presidency of the European Union, and part of that is hopefully us joining Schengen. And we have met all the requirements similar to what Romania and Croatia did recently. So it looks like we're all on track to join Schengen next year. And basically what it would just make us more attractive. There'll be, I suspect what will happen is you'll find a rush of more people coming to Cyprus because of it. And that might push up property prices more than what it currently is. But that's the only negative I can see. The rest is all positive.
Okay, well, positive, I suppose, if you get the property before that happens.
Absolutely.
Mark has asked for some clarification on the tax residency thing. Yeah. For tax resident, do you have to spend 60 days or 6 months in Cyprus?
Yes. So there's two. You can become a tax resident in Cyprus within 60 days. And then if you spend 60 days plus one to be on the safe side in Cyprus every year, and you are not tax resident in any other jurisdiction. So usually that would mean you don't live in any other country more than 6 months a year. Then you will be tax resident in Cyprus and you'll be taxed in Cyprus on your worldwide income. If the more normal route and how most people do it is by spending 6 months in Cyprus every year, and then you generally won't be a resident in any other country anyway. So unless you want to live in 3 jurisdictions, the 60 days is not an option. But if let's say you've got a house in London, you've got a house in Cyprus, and you've got a place in Mauritius, and you spend less than 6 months in Mauritius, less than 6 months in the UK, so you won't be tax resident in either of those jurisdictions, then you can spend 2 months in Cyprus, and you'll be tax resident in Cyprus and taxed in Cyprus on your worldwide income. So if you're on a boat traveling, nice option.
Okay. We've had a question. Is there a secure way to get pre-approval before you invest?
No, there is no. The way to do it is to come and see me. I can tell you what the requirements are. And if you meet the requirements, I haven't had anybody been shown away who have met the requirements. So it's pretty simple. If you, before you make an investment, make sure that you have got a clean criminal record, that you can show the income for as many people, for you, your spouse, if you're bringing minor children, or your parents who are dependent on you, that you can make a deposit and keep it in the bank for 3 years. Make sure that you haven't got one of haven't got TB or hepatitis C or whatever the medical requirements at the time are that you can afford to, or that you can qualify for medical insurance. And in that case, you can, with confidence, pay your deposit and buy a property.
Okay, I have to ask, when you say a clean criminal record, not asking on my behalf, but just in case, how clean does it have to be? Suppose there was a minor indiscretion in our youth.
Traffic violations and those type of things generally not an issue. It's generally got to do with if you have been criminally charged and prosecuted and had a prison sentence. I've never come across. I haven't had a client yet with a minor indiscretion. The ones that I've had were pretty bad, so I could tell them straight away that unfortunately you're not going to make it. But again, it's and I feel very confident that minor indiscretions, like maybe a drink driving when you were 18, will not be held against you.
Excellent. Okay, well, we have now run out of time. So thank you, Cyprand, for your really clear, practical advice. And to all our viewers, if you're considering applying for a Cyprus Golden Visa, or even you're just exploring the possibility, Holborn Pass is the ideal partner to guide you. I don't think we've told you how to get in touch, have we yet? So that's rather important. We will be sending it out with the email. I'm sure we will be sending you an email after the webinar. So look out for that, and that will have Cyprand's contact details. Although let's face it, it's a name. If you Google it, there's not going to be many others. I would imagine.
A bit of a tongue twister.
If you found this webinar useful, we'd love it if you could leave us a review on Trustpilot. There you go. There's the link there. That's very kind. Thank you. And yeah, so thank you once again. We hope this is the beginning of a really exciting new chapter for you in Cyprus. Oh, and another reminder I have to make is that we have our virtual overseas. So we have the Your Overseas Home virtual event, a whole day where we're just talking about all this stuff. So you can spend all day learning everything you need to know about buying property or moving to Cyprus. So do make sure you're registered for that. That's on the 4th of October. So that is so. Thank you once again, Cyprand. Thank you for viewing, and good luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Christopher. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for your time.